Everyone, we're going to get the program started. There's a lot to cover, and classes will be starting soon. So if you can continue to eat your food and grab a seat quietly, that would be great. Everyone ready? Get your places. And action. Thank you for joining us today at Penn State Lehigh Valley's Veteran Celebration. Veterans Day is an official United States holiday that honors those who have served in the armed forces. It's traditionally observed on November 11th, which is the day that the major hostilities were formally ended, the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th hour in 1918, from World War I. Originally called Armistice Day, the name was officially changed to Veterans Day in 1954. My name is Kate Morgan, and I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force, but I'm not here to tell my story today. Instead, I'm going to introduce to you some student veterans who will be sharing theirs. There's time set aside at the end of the program for questions, and additionally, there is some actual military equipment that belongs to these students on display over to my left. If you haven't already, I encourage everyone to check them out at the end of the program. Joining the military affects everyone in different ways. It's hard to describe, but the people who go into the military are not the same people who come out of the military. The experience changes everything, from how a person thinks, acts, and reacts to things in the world around them. There's a unified brotherhood and sisterhood among veterans. It's a unique combination of unspoken pride and humility. And every one of us is honored that we served our country and protected the freedom that America was founded on. Now, before this program begins, I would like to invite all veterans who are present to stand and be recognized. Thank you for your service. Now I would ask the entire room to stand and remove any hats, as graduating senior Kayla DiRienzo will lead us in the national anthem before we start the program.
Oh, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam? Blue frost troops and bright stars through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you so much, Kayla. Our first speaker today is David Wideman. He's a veteran of the United States Air Force. David?
Thank you. This will just take a second as she puts up my slideshow. I just want to say that I thought about how I'm going to put this into words about 12 different times, and 12 different times I've come up with something completely different. So as I go through this, just please bear with me. This is the first time I've ever spoke about this in this capacity to a bunch of strangers that I don't know. So we'll begin. This is my military experience. Is it? Okay. Yeah, there is some humor in this story. So, flying into Afghanistan, okay, I volunteered to be there. I was stationed at Altus, Oklahoma, and it's a training base. And I felt like I belonged somewhere else. So there was a tour of duty for 365 days to indefinite. And I went online and I saw this and I said, I'm going to do this. So I clicked, I signed up, I turned around to my supervisor and I said, boss, just so you know, I'm either going to go to the Horn of Africa, Iraq, or Afghanistan. And good luck. That's what he said to me. And so months went by, I ended up at Fort Bragg, and then I ended up there for about 4 months training in the field with other military personnel, all muddled together, all different branches. And then we get on a flight. We're flying for literally a day. It was 22 hours of flight time, and my buddy Chuck decided to take some Ambien. And I guess this is what happens when you fall asleep around a bunch of military guys. So to beat the boredom of flying for an entire day, yeah, we put combos in his mouth. All right, so just so you guys can have some perspective, please could everyone just close their eyes for a second? I want to simulate something for you. Okay, now you've been traveling for days now, and you're exhausted. You've been awake for most of it because your nerves are getting to you. And you end up landing safely, you get to base, and you start to do the changeover of the position of command and where you're going to be staying. So you get to your bunk, your little cardboard house, and you go to sleep for the night. As you're laying there, you start to relax, you let your guard down. And then this is what you hear. You snap out of bed. You get up. Everyone can open their eyes now. You get out of bed. Myself, I was in my underwear. I ran over, I grabbed my vest, I grabbed my helmet, grabbed my weapon. And everyone, well, who's ever experienced this can attest that it's kind of nerve-wracking, but this literally went off about 50 yards from where I was sleeping. And there were several of these attacks, these mortar attacks. So I get up, I rally my troops that are in my hut, and we get to the bunker. And that's my very first day in Afghanistan. Less than 12 hours, flying for an entire day. And then I think, finally get some rest, we get attacked. Now, what I'm here to talk about today is the humanitarian part, the humanitarian mission that we have in Afghanistan, what President Obama labels as nation building. Yes, I have seen combat. I was a gunner, a rear gunner on every convoy over 250 missions that I ran. I was either a rear gunner or I was the lead driver for the convoys that we ran. Now, as you can see on the map of Afghanistan, if you look to the, I guess, northeast middle part, you'll see Kabul, there's a star. That's primarily where I ran operations out of. There's a base called Bagram, and north of Bagram there is the Panjshir Valley, and the Panjshir Valley is the stronghold, or was the stronghold, for the Northern Alliance, if you know any history about Afghanistan. So that's where I spent my time. These are the crew of individuals that were with me at the time. The Indiana Jones guy in the back with the hat, that's Ben Lowenthal. He's the State Department. I believe he came there out of Italy. To the left of him, you'll see a female. That's Miss Morales. She was with the U.S. I want to see the USAID. She was with USAID. And then there's a guy missing, Tony Doth. He was with the Ag Department. So all these individuals were up there in Afghanistan, in the mountains, for a year. Oh, and the female down on the bottom, kneeling, in the middle, she is a journalist. She volunteered to come up there to interview us, to hear our story, and to spread that news about the good that we are doing in Afghanistan. And then there's also technicians, electricians, other specialist communications experts that we have up there with us. My role, because I was Air Force, obviously we're not going to have any planes up there, are we? So my role was to become security forces. So I had to go through a whole different regimen of training to be a cop and to also provide security. Also, you hear all the news about the nation building that we're doing, about building their army, building their police force. That's what I did. Myself and Sergeant Sanchez, we would go out on missions and we would train the police officers the proper tactics and procedures when it comes to law. I know we live in a bubble here in the United States where we think that the justice system is like that around the world. Well, I got some news for you. These people, most of them live in the Middle Ages. I've seen pits, I've seen dungeons, I've seen holes where people were just convicted on hearsay and thrown into holes in the ground and left there to rot. And this is what we're trying to do there is enlighten these people to a better way of living, a better way of justice, a better way of government. And that's primarily what we were up there doing, is being a liaison for their government. That was my view until someone tried to kill me. One of the religious leaders, I was living in a safe house, and he got it in his head that myself and my other friends who were living there were the White Devil, and got 20 pounds of dynamite and 2 landmines, and was hiding behind a boulder with some wires, waiting for us to come out in the morning, and was going to blow us up. But unfortunately, the guys who helped get him that stuff turned him in. And that mullah, he's a priest, their mullah, he ended up losing both of his legs because of it. That's their justice system there. This is where I moved into, this building right here. If you look, actually I will point to it. These containers come in important later on. This is where I lived, and this right here is an entrenchment that we dug to fortify in case we ever got overrun, because we are to the back of the mountain. You see how the valley just comes down to a choke point, and there are routes for the Taliban to get to us. And this is also very important right here, this plateau. That plateau, this freak disaster happened. And on top of the other humanitarian missions that we do with agriculture, trying to provide information to the locals about what would be the best crop to grow in this area, because so much of the land is just devastated from years and years of war, there's barely any vegetation. But what we do there is we do a lot of soil sampling and provide them with seeds and knowledge on how to grow particular crops. And so we're out to do a mission one day, and they said it was like once every 50 years this freak storm happens. Just so happens I was there. Just so happens we were on a convoy and we just left, and this storm literally came out of nowhere. Imagine a chocolate waterfall with boulders. That's what just came flying out of nowhere as we were driving. We were coming down this road and literally came flying down. We almost lost our lives. What used to be a little trickling river swelled. Trees, houses. As you can see, there are people down in the mud trying to salvage what they can. Also, there were fatalities. I did see excuse me. There were a lot of dead bodies. A lot of families mourning. And I had to help them pull those bodies out. The river swelled to at least 18 feet. We know this because that river, from where the river usually stood during a normal day, is about 20 feet to the top. So as you can see, that's where the river swelled, and there was a lot of destruction. If you can see this gorge right here, this gorge is about as big as this room. And there used to be a road that went across it. Well, when this storm hit, and because there's no vegetation to hold anything in place, the mountains just gave way. And a lot of parts of the mountain just broke free. Boulders, everything. Landslide. So this is what happened. I had to trudge through that. I had to trudge through, well, I'm forgetting something. The reason why I had to trudge through this is because we had a group out who was out doing a reconnaissance mission 2 valleys over. And as that storm hit, they got separated. They were crossing a bridge, and oddly enough, the funny part of the story is that as they were over there trying to gather some intel and talk to the locals, everyone was resisting. No one spoke English. No one even spoke Dari or Persian to our interpreters. No one wanted to talk to us, right? So as they were leaving the village and they were crossing this bridge, they heard, "Run!" Right? They, like, what? They turn around. Next thing they saw the swell of the river coming down, and they ran across, and they got across literally in the nick of time. They would have been killed if they just would have just kept on walking across this bridge. But they made it across, and fortunately those people, whoever yelled at, saved their lives. And it was none of the crew. So I had to go out. I volunteered. Sergeant Sanchez and myself and 2 others volunteered to go find this crew. And we had another crew north up at our comm site. They were separated from us. So we went out, tried to find them. There were many ravines, ruts, and a lot of people trying to get back to their families or get back to their homes, right? So I'm hanging over a ledge, a drop-off, about a good 10 feet, and I'm pulling some of the locals up onto this ledge so they can get to where they're going. And my buddy, he saw me off in the distance. He said all I could see was this big green guy just hoisting people up over this ledge. And I said, that's got to be Weidman, right? So they're yelling. We realize that that's them. So then, unfortunately, we stop helping these people. We get down there and we get to them. 2 of them were suffering from exposure and severe dehydration because they were cut off for almost 2 days. And they lost their vehicles, and they had to hike back on foot. And also, I want to bear in mind how dangerous this is because the landmine to human ratio is like 100 to 1. Some reports say it's more. So not only have these mountains gave way and all this debris, but so did the landmines. And the landmines were everywhere. So when I was forging through a river, I was forging through a river with landmines floating down it. And as I'm sitting there trying to get to my crew, there's landmines there too, you know? It's very, very dangerous, very risky to be there. Sergeant Barnhart, he's the older gentleman in the back covered in mud. Grumpy, as we've nicknamed him. He was suffering from exposure. And Sergeant Lucia, right there in the back, closest to us, he was the one who saw me. He was the one who was shouting for me. Now, at the end of this, right, people lost everything, so what did we do? We routed our resources. We contacted Bagram. We said, hey, something really, really terrible happened here. What can we do to help these people? So we got in contact with USAID, and I ended up driving 4 up-armored 10,000 truck. Originally, it's like a 7-ton truck, but it's like armored and encased with like a giant box in the back of it. And we filled it with rice and coal and cooking equipment, so these people can, at least feed themselves while they're trying to rebuild their homes. And we did that on our own initiative. We realized these people were hurting, and we did what we could to help better the situation. And I ran 3 missions doing that. And earlier on, I pointed out like these little rectangles. Yeah, all of those that I pointed out, we filled those with supplies to get to these people who lived in the Panjshir Valley. That was us afterwards. As you can see, a lot of them have coal on their face because it's not the best packaged material. And we breathed in a lot of that coal and flour. this is another part of the humanitarian mission that we do. That right there is Sergeant Rose, and she is a nurse. And what we would do is go out to the other valleys and see what kids needed help. You know, if you had an ailment, we would go ahead of time. We'd send our interpreters and say, hey, on these dates we're gonna come up here. We're gonna stay overnight at great risk, letting that information out there. But we would go out there and we would provide medical assistance to sick children, people with broken arms, legs. So that's what we did there. And I provided security for Sergeant Rose and Sergeant Woods, which right there in the middle. And that right there is the journalist I told you about earlier, who came up there and was interviewing us. And if you even Google search my name, David Weidman, Afghanistan, you'll see her article. It's by Julie Weckerline. And she's also a somewhat famous blogger. She was on Good Morning America about 2 months ago about her experiences as being a military mother and stuff like that. But yeah. So there's the agricultural part, there's the humanitarian now, and that's Sergeant Solace. She's up there just trying to get kids to come in to not be afraid to have their vitals taken and stuff like that. So she's like, you know, giving them candy and trying to coax them to come in. And that little kid had a gash in its leg, and Sergeant Rose was stitching it up. And this also took place during what we would do for their animals. We would have them bring their sheep or goats or whatever, and we would stick them with medicine so they wouldn't get sick or get diseases or suffer from whatever famine that might be hitting them at the time to boost their immunity. So while we're there with these other people who came up to our valley, these vets, well, of course, we have medics on us because in case, you know, an attack happens, you need to have a medic. Well, people were also coming up with sick people. We didn't turn them away. We saw them. We made sure that they got the attention that they needed. Now, the most important part of my speech, and I don't know how long I've been going here now. Have I gone over my limit? Oh, yeah? Sorry. Now, what we see in the news about ending the war in Afghanistan, I want to make it abundantly clear to everyone here that the war is not over, and the war will not be over, and we will be there for a very long time. Our bases are going to be there for a very long time. I don't know if you, South Korea, okay? The war is still going on there. It's a ceasefire, but the war is still there. Our troops are still there. We still do rotations every year to South Korea. And Afghanistan is going to be the same way. And I want you to just please keep in mind that there are people out there who are trying to do good, who are trying to provide a better way of living, trying to provide democracy. And also, a very touching story, real quick. We were up doing a mission, and on top of one of the mountains was just like one of these gentlemen right here. I went to the top, had to pop smoke, so the Chinooks that are flying up into the valley could see where I am, see where we are, because they're all flying blind, okay? So as I'm up there with Sergeant Sanchez, these little kids, you see this little ant trail of these kids making their way through the minefields to come see us, to come talk to us. As I'm up there, this little kid, about 15 years old, spoke to me in better English than most people who are from the South, said to me, to my surprise, he said to me, "Are you a terrorist?" Yeah, I thought the same thing. Kind of shock and amazement of how clear he said this to me. Then I pointed to my flag and I said, "No, I'm an American." And he said, "Oh, really? Last time you guys came here, you defeated the Russians, and then you left. And you left us alone." Excuse me. And he went on to tell me about how the Taliban raped his mother, killed his sister, and the other boys who were there too said the same thing. They all shook their head. we left these people alone for the Taliban to come in. We provided them with ammunition. I don't know if you saw the movie Charlie Wilson's War. It's very frustrating to see that movie, to think that we did something so great, but yet we did something so terrible. So this kid's perspective is that, oh, it's just the Americans coming here to take care of some bad guys, and they're going to leave us, and more terrible things are going to happen to us. And I made a promise to the kid. I said to him, I said, no, we are the good guys. We're staying for good this time. This isn't going to happen again. And he just looked at me like I was a liar. So, we need to be there. We need to be there. That's all. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, David. Our next speaker is Joe Edmond, who is a veteran of the United States Navy.
Hi there, my name is Joe, and I served in the United States Navy for about 7 years. Now, originally I didn't want to speak at this event, but the guys over here asked me to because my experiences were so much different than theirs. They all did multiple tours in Iraq or Afghanistan, and I didn't want to come up here because it felt like my service wasn't as great as theirs, but they wanted me to come up, so. Make this work. All right. So I was in the Navy for just under 7 years, and you know, I downplayed my service, but then when I told these guys what I did, every one of them said that they would rather go back to Iraq or Afghanistan than do what I did. And that is serve on a submarine. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen movies about the subs, and they're probably very accurate. It's very cramped, it's dark, it's a tight space that you can't get away from. You know, they're only 34 feet wide, and that's where I lived. That's where I mean, it's me and 133 of my best friends. They weren't really my best friends. And that's my ship, the USS Hawaii. She's a brand new submarine, and I actually had the privilege to help build her. So it's pretty cool. It was a lot of work, but we got her out, and I've done 2 deployments where we stay underwater and we don't do anything. And just to get an idea of what sub life is like, for those of you with walk-in closets, we sleep 6 people in one of those. And your bed is just a little bit bigger than you are. And you've got about 2.5 feet to the guy above you. The racks are three high. You usually go months on months without seeing the sun. Again, I mean, you've only got 3 bathrooms for 100 and some odd people. The captain's got his own. You can't use it. And then you run out of fresh fruit and vegetables. You run out of eggs, you run out of milk, so towards the end of those 6 months, you pretty much just got peanut butter and crackers and rice. And it is absolutely as dark as they say it is. Most of the time, you see the picture on the left, that's what the hallways, we call them passageways, that's what they look like all the time. My brother was on my submarine He got a chance to do a Tiger cruise. He was in the Navy for 5 years, and he calls my submarine a tomb. And in fact, after 3 days, he came off my submarine crying to see the sun and to get fresh air again. Which, this is a guy who's already served for multiple years, and 3 days on the sub put him in tears. Oh, and as you can see from the picture on the right, there's not enough room to get down one of these hallways without bumping into people. I know a lot of people have a personal space bubble. That goes away. On a sub, silence is life. I mean, if you guys have ever seen movies, we don't have radar, we have sonar. So we listen, and we have hydrophones and sonar that lets us figure out where other things are. That's how we navigate. But other people can hear what we do. So literally, you're whispering a lot of the time. We wear sneakers instead of boots because if I stomp around in the engine room, people can hear that. And if an enemy hears that, they can kill us. And literally, because I've manned the sonar sets, literally we can track ships from hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. So that sound, because the water is so much more dense, really radiates forever. So you gotta watch out for that. And we don't have enough people on the sub. So we only have a crew of 134 guys. So we don't have a dedicated firefighter team. We are all the firefighters. Everybody's got to be trained to stop fighting. Everybody has to know how to shoot torpedoes or track targets or launch countermeasures because we just don't have enough people to do all the jobs necessary all the time. So a big part of being on a submarine is being able to do all of these things. And this is me in the Panama Canal, and behind that is the Bridge of Americas, or the Bridge of the Americas between, or it's in Panama that connects the North America and South America. Unfortunately, on a submarine, there's no running away from anything. If there's a fire, the fires will consume the oxygen in minutes. If we don't put it out, we all die. We don't have more air. It's just the way it is. If there's flooding could take minutes to seconds to kill everybody on the submarine, depending on where it is. We have a lot of hazardous materials on board between refrigerants and some of the different chemicals we have. If that spills or gets out, it can kill all of us if we don't combat it fast enough. So there's no running away from anything on a sub. And then there's the sea, which is the biggest taker of lives for a sailor. And especially on a submarine, the water's always trying to get in. And if you make a mistake, it gets in, and then everybody dies. So you really have to be on top of your game. There's a lot of checks on everything we do. So without, and this is me getting presented my submarine warfare qualification, which means that I'm able to do all those things. So even before I get to my job, I had to be able to do all of these things. And particularly my job was, I operated a nuclear power plant. Our submarines are nuclear powered because the power plant doesn't require oxygen. And because we have that almost infinite power source, we can make our own air, we can make our own water, which means we can stay underwater almost forever. We just run out of food. And we did run out of food sometimes. That was terrible. Now, nuclear power is dangerous, or is hazardous. So nukes in the Navy, that's what we call it, nuclear trained guys, are some of the most highly trained guys in the fleet. They say we're the top 10% of the military. And I was in school for almost 2 years before I even got to a submarine, where we studied thermodynamics, reactor plant principles, reactor safety principles. And when I did get to my submarine, I maintained and operated all sorts of reactor plant equipment between pumps, turbines, gears, air conditioning systems, steam systems, water purification. There was really just a ton of work to do all the time. In addition to that, I was also a water chemist, so I took water samples. I made sure that the water that we put into our boilers meets the specifications that we need to do. The water in the boilers meets the specifications. And I also handled reactor coolant every day to make sure that the health of our reactor was maintained. And then I also monitored most of the submarine for radiation. Now, radiation can be harmful to people, and using different instruments that we had, I walked around the submarine to measure how much radiation someone could get in a different part. So I'm trying to find places where it's abnormal, places where maybe we're having problems with the reactor. We never did. I also would clean up radioactive contamination if we found some. We never found some. And if there was a reactor accident, I would have been the first responder. Every time we went into the reactor compartment, I was the first guy in, measuring, because we have to do maintenance in the reactor compartment. So I'd be the first guy in, measuring all the different areas. So this way, different guys, whether they're civilians or ship's force, would know what they're getting when they went into the reactor compartment. So really, I got the most, and comparatively, because everyone talks about how dangerous radiation is, comparatively, in 7 years in the Navy, I got less radiation than you guys get every day, or every year, I'm sorry, just from background sources. You can check and look that up. So we're really retentive about safety when it comes to these nuclear power plants, and they're absolutely safe. And at 27, I was responsible for about $1 billion of reactor plant equipment, and at least 2 of the reports that I submitted based on radiation, on reactor health and personnel, how much radiation they got, reviewed by Congress, and that's about normal. They say the average age of somebody operating a reactor in the Navy is about 23. During my time in the Navy, I got to travel a lot. I went to Japan, I went to South Korea. When I was in South Korea, we did Habitat for Humanity for the South Koreans, so we helped build houses for the South Koreans there. And I got a chance to live in Chicago, South Carolina, upstate New York. Saratoga Springs is a Navy base. Nobody knows about it. And then New London. And then I was stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii for 3 years, which is awesome. So if you guys ever get a chance, I would recommend going. Unfortunately, even though I was there for 3 years, I didn't get to see a lot of it because we were underway for like 2 years. And a quick, what does being a veteran mean to me? And these guys, and I say these guys know more than me, but they say I'm crazy for going to the submarine. Sacrifice, duty, and responsibility. I've worked 100-hour weeks for the last 7 years, and that was minimum. I've also worked 130-hour weeks. Duty and responsibility. I mean, on a sub, death is, sometimes just on the other side of the hull, or it's 2 valves away. So one little mistake, and it's 134 lives. And you can take a look at the USS Scorpion and the USS Thresher, which were both lost to the sea. And teamwork, because there was no getting, there's so much work I had to do to maintain reactor safety and keep that boat running with the track record that we had. And being on a submarine for 5 years taught me that the sun is awesome. And being outdoors is great. There's nothing like being confined inside a tomb for 5 years to give you an appreciation for being outside. So that's all I've got.
Thank you so much, Joe. Next, I'm introducing Adam Howard, who also is going to give you a different perspective on naval life. I think this one's more above water.
Good afternoon at this point in time. I'm Adam Howard. As I said, I was with the United States Navy. I was with a subgroup of the Navy known as the Seabees. By a show of hands, who knows what they are? Ooh, 3. No, just kidding. Seabees are very literally a construction battalion. So while we are a part of the Navy, we don't necessarily go on a ship unless we're going from point A to point B. So in the 7 years I spent on active duty, I was on a ship for a month. And that was it. It was very nice. It was not, I could never have done that. Just thinking about it makes me quiver. All right, so I joined in July of 2002. Went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois. From there, got shipped over to a place called Port Hueneme, California, which is northwest of LA by about an hour and a half or so. So right on the coast, very nice, right there by the Pacific Coast Highway. Went on a lot of drives just to clear my head. I got attached to Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 3, based out of Port Hueneme, which is a deployable group that does humanitarian efforts, forward operating base construction, disaster relief, you name it. We went all over the place. I ended up hitting about 42 different countries in 6 years. A lot of travel. So this is one of the loadouts pre-deployment. You have about 625 people in a battalion, and you've got to get everybody geared up and ready to go to whatever location, you name it. You still got to get the same amount of gear. So it's very organized, but an extremely long process. Pre-deployment takes anywhere from 1 to 3 months, depending on what your mission is going to be. Typically, they keep you for 3 regardless. So you do actually 3 months pre-deployment, 8 months at your location, 1 month post-deployment. So your deployments go to a year. You go through things in the field. You spend about 2 weeks straight, no showers, living in a foxhole if you're lucky. You might have a tent, maybe, and it only fits 1 person. So you can't really sit up. In order to sit up, you have to open it up most of the way and peek your head out to talk to your closest neighbor. This is actually a guy that I got put on watch with. This is, you'll see another photo of him here shortly. He's an art major at Kutztown University, of all things. Yeah. So he gets on just fine in the field. It's not, there's nothing, that he can't do. But standing on a 50 caliber machine gun watch, during the 2 weeks that you're out in the field, you attempt to build a temporary base. While you're doing so, instructors are continuously bombarding you with simulated attacks. So you have to defend and continue to build without losing any valuable information or getting your commanding officer killed. Simulatedly, obviously. It's very difficult. So you end up doing about 2 weeks of very limited sleep. You might get 2 hours a night. You're lucky if you do. So yeah, that's just the pre-deployment. That's before you even get out into the desert. A couple of our guys walking around with non-loaded M16s, obviously. You've got the full battle rattle. And you can see the tents in the background, just to get a feel for how big they are. This is my direct supervisor, actually. This is the guy that I reported to when I was in the desert. He is much higher pay grade, and he is eating his lunch out of a bag on the ground. Covered in mud, cold, and I believe this was It's about March time frame. And even in California, it gets pretty cold at night. So without any hot water to warm you up in the evening, numbness just becomes part of the body, I guess. Going through convoy training. In the military or in the Navy, I was a construction mechanic. So my job was to maintain construction and tactical vehicles. I worked on everything from Humvees to bulldozers and everything in between. It was a very interesting experience because when I wasn't turning on a wrench, they gave me a shovel and told me to dig. This is typical of any place that you're going to see overseas. You go to any desert type scenario, the only thing that's going to change is what you're walking on. This is in Djibouti, Africa. This is very literally my street. The tent that you can see clearly on the right-hand side, if you were to walk in, first cubicle on the left hand, that's where I lived. It was kind of nice. I had a bunk bed, and I was happy. You go through quite a few hardships when you get to this type of situation. As you can see, there's an air conditioning unit on each side, which is very, very nice. There's one on both sides of the tent, and the reason being is it gets very, very warm. While we were there, the hottest we ever saw was 153 degrees.
What?
Yeah. With humidity, 153. You can kind of see in the background at the very end of the street, a green vehicle. My shop was just to the left. It was not enclosed. It did not have air conditioning. It had fans to blow hot air around. That was 8 months of my life. I lost a lot of weight. So that was the hottest we ever saw. And that's one of the conditions that you kind of get used to, heat. I was fortunate enough not to be a builder who actually did carpentry work. Those guys would be in full gear outside the wire, laying a tin roof in the same temperatures. I felt more for them than for myself. I was a little lucky I at least got shade. This is a place called K Crossing in Iraq. The significance of K Crossing is that it became a, think of it like a big truck stop for the military convoys to come through. It was between Kuwait and Iraq. This was in 2005. Another one of my supervisors and another guy I worked with there on the right-hand side. This was taken at 10 a.m. and it was 112 degrees out. Eventually you just kind of get used to it, and depending on where you are will depend on how quickly you would acclimate to it. But coming home, at one point in time when I came home from this one, I think it was 80 degrees out, very nice, clear, sunny day, and I had a coat on. Other hazards of the job. This is a baby, obviously, just a little bitty scorpion that we found on a job site, only about yay big. We did find its mother. It did not live. The thing was huge. I mean, it was looking at us menacingly. It almost had a conversation. So you come across a couple different hazards. So you've got critters. Obviously, everybody's seen pictures of camel spiders. I didn't bring any of those because I figured you guys had all seen it. So worst we had was scorpions and then these guys. Yeah. He wasn't very happy when we unearthed him. We weren't very happy when we unearthed them either, so there was a mutual understanding there. There was a lot of just nasty things in the ground that you come across, and the reason being is it's cool. It's cooler out of the sunlight, obviously. Sorry. So this is pretty much the basic idea of when you start building up a base, right? For the CVs, when we go to build a forward operating base, we show up to very literally a plot of land. There's nothing there but soil, so there may be some trash if you're lucky. We show up in our convoy with all of our equipment. We start providing security for the initial barrier process, and we set up. And these, we have a chain link fence on the outside of it, but these are HESCO barriers. They're very literally just filled with sand. They're extremely heavy, but they help do a great job of blocking any kind of incoming attack. Makes it more difficult to see from further away. And they kind of absorb shrapnel rather well, so we're thankful for that. But you'll very literally do an entire perimeter base around that. Other forces will come in, Marines will show up next, and they usually do provide security for us so we can then continue to build the base. Until the base gets built up to a certain point in time, you're living out of either a tent, if you're lucky, or your Humvee. Shower truck every so often. Otherwise, baby wipes are your best friend. And eventually your nose stops working because everybody stinks the same. As you're building up bases, you do things like this. This is called SWAHUT, stands for Southwest Asia. It's the exact same design that was used during Vietnam and Korean War. The designs haven't changed. They're very slapstick, very easy to do. You can cut multiple boards at once and get them up quickly. Usually get an order for 80 or so of these at a time. They give you about 5 months to build them. We try to get it done in about 2.5. During the course of a deployment, you work 6.5 hours or 6.5 days a week. You get half a day in the morning on Sunday to observe religious ceremonies or whatever, if that's your liking. I slept. Due to the fact that the other 5.5 plus days are 12 to 18 hours worth of work a day. By the time you get off, get showered, or cleaned up as best you can, you're getting about 4. So it's kind of becomes either a bunch of people walking around like zombies or highly caffeinated. It really depends on how they want to work it. But it's an overall good experience. This is the artist that we're talking about. In most operating bases or most places overseas, you'll find what they call barrier art, very literally, as a barrier with art. Catchy name, right? Everywhere we went, Gaelitz here, petty officer Gaelitz, would paint something somewhere. And it became kind of a Where's Waldo type of a thing for a bunch of guys in the rest of the battalion as we move around a lot. So this ended up being a full piece. It took him about 2 weeks in his off time to complete it. And it was just kind of a nice thing to see. But this is what an artist looks like in the desert, in case you guys are curious. That's about the end of it, really. Seems pretty straightforward.
That brings us to the end of our actual presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to direct them to your people. And there's also some items over here to look at. Additionally, there is water and soda for sale over there, and all of the proceeds will go towards these T-shirts. Not to the T-shirts, but these T-shirts stand for the club. It's the Penn State Lehigh Valley Blue and White Warriors Veterans Club. And they put on this program completely on their own. So just
Just so you guys can wrap your mind around what it is that, or what it feels like to be a soldier. I brought in my flak vest that has some of the weight on it. So it's roughly about 50 pounds, and my helmet. So you can try some of the gear on if you're careful. If you drop it, I'm going to drop you. It's valuable equipment. But if you want to try it on and see what this weight is like, and also keep in mind that it's missing ammunition, it's missing the weapons, it's missing all this other stuff, and this is what I had to wear, climbing in and out of vehicles, saving people's lives, and just doing a normal job. So if you'd like to know what it's like, please feel free to come up. I'll help you put it on.
Is there any questions?
Can I try it on?
Any questions?
Oh, you got a question?
Question?
No, we want to try it on.
Oh, they want to try it on. Questions?
I just wondered what each of you are studying now here at Penn State.
Oh.
Dick?
Psychology.
Yay.
Computer science.
Business management and marketing.
Nuclear engineering. Are there any more questions? You were?
Great job. Great job.